So, for example, Israel in the Old Testament, including Moses, understood God as a tribal God. Also, a God that was limited to where he was. The Psalms say, "Come and let us go to the mountain of the Lord and to the house of our God." The Hebrews did not have an understanding exclusively that God was everywhere at all times. Early times in understanding of the Bible, in fact, starting with the Garden of Eden, and when I start mentioning these things, I think it's going to connect for you. Remember the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden? Where was God then? He came down in the cool of the day and walked with them. I just want you to look at the story and expand your thinking about God. When they ate the fruit, whatever it was, I'm so glad it wasn't carbohydrates. That just would have made it even worse for me. But it was, they ate the fruit, whatever it was. And the Bible says they discovered that they were naked, and God sewed clothing together for them to wear. That's in the story. That's not the picture of God that you get in Sunday school. God in a sewing machine. God putting fig leaves together. But it's one of the stories of the Bible. And one of the problems within the church is because something becomes uncomfortable, or, we don't quite know how to grasp this, so we ignore it and just hate anybody that tries to interpret it for us, because it usually is punitive. Much of the Psalms are the blues. It's something you'd sing at Mikey G's on a Saturday night with karaoke with Merv. I sat up and sung with him a couple of times. We had a great time years ago. It was a sense of, your cheating heart will pang someday and crave the love you throw away. I want you to understand these were human people and human words and human expressions. Have you ever had anyone who, you just were having a bad time in your relationship with? Oh, you love them, but I don't want to say he's mad as hell, but, you're really upset with them. That was Moses in the 90th Psalm. And so he said, "Teach me to number my days so that I may apply my heart to wisdom." There's so much truth in music and expression and in stories in the Bible. And I don't want us to be afraid of them. I don't want us to ignore them. The Psalms was a hymn book. 5 divisions. It was not all literal. And it wasn't God saying, "Write to me, I'm really angry with you, God." But there are people that we know who have suffered things in their lives, and they really are angry with God. And yet they think they're going to be struck dead because they even question God. I find people in the Bible who are always questioning God. Remember the story of Moses with the 10 Commandments? He went up on the 10 Commandments. While he was doing it, the Bible says they were down there dancing and worshiping other gods. And he came down with the first set of commandments and smashed them. He was so ticked off with his bunch. Smashed them. He had to go back and get another edition. He got the second edition of the 10 Commandments. In fact, God said, "If you want to kill them all." I mean, you can't take that all literally, folks. I hope you don't think that literally. But sometimes we use figurative language, don't we? "I'm so upset with you, I'd just like to kill you." Well, that doesn't mean you really want to do that. It's a figurative speech. And the Bible is full of figurative language. And it's comfortable to stay with the Lord as my shepherd. But I want you to know there's more to it than that. There is this possibility of grappling with the God who evolves in our understanding. And from the pages of the Old Testament, we finally get to the gospel. And Jesus. Jesus is so much more easy to understand for me. And he said, if you've seen me, this is what God behaves like. This is what God is supposed to be like for you. And so the gospel gives us another version of God. From a tribal God, from a God who is angry, from a God who is always going to kill somebody's neighbors to help Israel out. You know, that evolved, that changed. Human consciousness changed to the point where Jesus, I mean, how do you square what Jesus said? That you should love your neighbor or love your enemy. How do you square that with killing the Philistines? You see, things evolve. People's understandings evolved. When I was a child, I was taught, you know, little songs and verses. Not just little verses, huge amounts of verses. But, you know, and it was, this is the Bible, and this is the way it is, and you just believe it. One of the first things I was taught was Moses wrote all 5 books of the Torah. Well, he must have been quite a miracle worker because he recorded his own death in the Torah. I mean, you see what I'm saying to you folks? We need to look at this a little more imaginatively and less fearfully. We can read any great literature. And I have students, I know one student that I was going to have was going to do a Flannery O'Connor course with me. She started reading Flannery O'Connor and said to me, I don't want to do a course. I got enough problems in my life than read Flannery O'Connor. Well, you know, it didn't work. Flannery O'Connor's not for everybody. You know, there are other people who enjoy other kinds of genre that I just couldn't possibly handle. Horror. You couldn't pay me to read that stuff. So, teach us to number our days. How did Moses end up his life? 120. He didn't get to where he wanted to get, but he got to see it. And I'm asking us this morning, where are you headed? How you spend your days will be how you have spent your life at the end. Moses was a man of accomplishment, human emotion, and he understood God that way. And I invite us this morning to know that even our own understanding of God changes, and it grows and evolves, and to be open. To be open. And to look at our own lives. And Moses said in the 90th Psalm, you might live to be 70, you might live to be 80, you might live to be a little longer. He lived to be 120, but it's what he did with his life that was impressive. Led people out of bondage. That's what I want to do with my life. I want to make the world a better place, wherever my world is, because I've been here. And in the process, like Moses, there may be a day or two occasionally when I'm very frustrated with God. And I hope that you will be too. And understand that it's okay. Amen.